Hey, good morning, church. Glad you're here. We are in a state of not having a live service this morning, and that's because we have had some people come down with flus or colds. Also, I do know of two people who have tested positive for COVID within our congregation, so I'll be praying for them. I do know that I briefly had conversations with them over this last week into this last week and into the last week, just very briefly. And so I've been making sure that I'm doing well too over this last week. I know I canceled Wednesday night youth group, and I didn't go to practice for Little League as a coach on Thursday, just trying to keep my distance with people and groups of people that might have an issue with it. Let me turn my phone off so that way we're not getting dings the whole time, because when people say stuff, it'll ding me. So, hey, Beverly, we have the ability to just hang out. I just want to connect with you for about 20 minutes and see how you're doing. If things are going well, you can let me know. If you have any prayer requests, I'll see them pop up here on the screen. I can throw those on as other people can see those as well. I do have a praise and a prayer. Megan Newberger and Will Newberger, they went over west to Portland and had a healthy baby boy. But because of some of the issues that she had with more amniotic fluid, that fluid was in the baby Eli's lungs, and they put him on a CPAP. He's been on that CPAP. He was on the CPAP for a few days, and they took it off, I believe, yesterday. He was successful throughout the day, and then he was successful overnight. So that's a praise that God is moving through that situation. Baby Eli is doing well, and they have a few more days to make sure everything checks out, and they will be on their way home. So continue to pray for the Newberger family, and I'm glad to hear the great news from them. Secondly, be praying for those who have picked up COVID and are on the mend. Continue to pray that we are able as a church just to do mitigating things that can help. Because I know that some would be like, well, why aren't you having your church service? We want to be there. And it's like, we want you to be here too. But did you know that there is there's Old Testament rules when it comes to dealing with infectious disease and things of the like. And we'll get to that in a moment. I want to show you some scriptures in Leviticus 13 where there was protocol, there was mitigation factors, there was risk assessment on the worship atmosphere of the Israelites, and it had to do with things like that. So glad you're here this morning. We're going to move through Leviticus 13 and then also Matthew chapter 5, two different messages, one about where we are dealing with, well, why didn't you have church today service? Because we are the church connecting here. Secondly, we want to be a people of the second mile. That's in Matthew chapter 5. So Leviticus 13, you can turn there. I'll put Leviticus 13 on the screen for you. And even before this getting together online, this morning, my wife came to me. I went turkey hunting with a youth this morning, and we almost had success. I'll tell that story later. But when I got home, she's like, could you be more entertaining today? And I was like, I have no idea how to do that. I don't know, like put straws in my nose or rubber bands around my face or do a dance, which I can't dance. I'm not going to sing. So I really don't know how to be more entertaining. Maybe you can give me some ideas in the chat here. Maybe you can ask me a question about me that you've always wanted to know. I don't know, but we want to be interactive. So if you have questions, and it can even be an off-the-wall question, ask me anything Sunday morning. I don't know, but I do know we're going to go through two things. If I see questions pop up, I will stop, read those, maybe even throw those on the screen like I can do here. We got Donna and Les with us. Hello, good morning. Tell them hello. So I can move those into the screen. I do see we have a prayer request from Andrea Jackson. Marv had surgeries, home, sore, but doing well. And we're glad to see that he is doing well. We've been praying for him. And then I'll give some more prayer requests at the end that we had in the bulletin from last week. So be praying for Megan, be praying for those who we know have come in contact with COVID. And then we have some other people who just have colds that are on our volunteer staff and our volunteer members, and they just have a seasonal cold, but we want to be careful with those. So with that said, you might be wondering, hey, why didn't we have service this morning? Well, because there's been some interactions that we want to mitigate and be careful with. Secondly, is one thing I haven't shared throughout this all, because I do want to have church services live. I think that there are multiple reasons for that, but as a leadership, we also know that there are opportunities to love our neighborhood, love those who are around us, and to make sure that the ability for COVID to spread isn't there, because there's also government things with that too. So we just want to be loving and caring as best we can. And I know not everyone's going to agree with us. So glad you're here with us today. And I'll give you a little bit of the reasoning of why we do what we do, especially concerning the Old Testament. We have sometimes this idea that there can't be any sickness. There can't be any problems. There can't be anything like that because God's victorious and he's going to get you through. But in the Old Testament, when miracles were happening, when God was leading them by a pillar of fire and a pillar of clouds, and there were miracles from Moses and Aaron and the parting of the Red Sea and all of those things, when they set up an encampment in Leviticus 13, it's interesting that God gave them some rules. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to make sure I can see it full screen on mine. I can also go ahead and zoom in if I need to. But we have where in Leviticus 13, there were diseases going around. And what should you do about that? And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Leviticus 13, verse 1, and it's kind of I don't want to say a boring read, but it's just about infectious skin diseases. And in verse 2, it says, when anyone has a swelling or a rash or a bright spot on his skin that may become infectious skin disease, he must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is a priest. The priest is to examine the sore on the skin, and if the hair of the sore is turned white and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious skin disease. When the priest examines him, he shall pronounce him ceremonially unclean. Now, what does that mean, ceremonially unclean? That means that they cannot participate in the spiritual, sacrificial, and temple for worship. They would declare them unclean, and then 7 days later they would look at them again and say, okay, this is healed up. Now go wash. If you had clothing that might have come in contact with this, get rid of that and burn it. And so we have some evidence from the Testament where all the time and everything was victorious and righteous and great and non-infectious. They had protocols and mitigating factors and risk assessment on what they did. And so that's not a complete justification of, hey, this is why we do what we do, and so you're just going to have to live with it. It's an indication that there are decisions made by those in leadership to say, hey, okay, this is going on, so how do we best deal with it? And we're not going to get it right all the time, and we're going to get it right some of the time. So I just wanted you to know, look through the Old Testament where these rules and regulations were put in place, and not every single rule and regulation in the Old Testament applies to today, but there is an ethos, a thing that we see in the Old Testament where it's like, okay, let's use our brains here. What do we do? And how do we do that most effectively? How do we love people? How do we, there are Christians who are fearful and there's Christians who aren't fearful. So what do? Well, we love, listen, care as best as possible. Wish we were here, wish we had songs, wish we had praises going as a people group. But we will see how this week goes and see where our volunteer base is and go from there. So Leviticus 13, verse 1 through that whole thing, you can go through that and read some of the rules and regulations that they had to abide by. And there's more, by the way, in various parts of the Old Testament on what they would do. So that's for that. Let's get to some prayer requests. We have this from Karen. You can go ahead and read that. I'll read it out loud to you. Pray that God stops Corey from moving forward with a medical decision that might permanently change your life, we'll continue to do that. And I've been praying for that for a while. We'll continue to do so. I also have a prayer request from Diana Pashon. Please pray for my family and especially my brother's family. Nephew tragically passed away yesterday. Leaves behind a 3-week-old son and a young daughter. I'm so sorry to hear that. We'll definitely be praying for that situation, and seeing tragic things happen to young families is especially hard on my heart, just because I have a young family and I couldn't imagine my family going through that. Sarah says I can't die before her, and so I will lift that up in prayer later on. So one of the things I want to remind us of, and it does go in conjunction with Leviticus 13, of being people of the second mile. Now, what's a people of the second mile? What does that even mean? In Matthew chapter 5, verse 38, Jesus is talking to a crowd of people, and they have an understanding of Jewish law. And I'll read it for you. It says, if you've heard it said, it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. So Jewish law was eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It was, hey, if you do this, there's a consequence for it under Jewish law. So one of those Old Testament laws that was like that, let's say you were out chopping wood, and when you're chopping wood, there was another family behind you chopping their wood, and you chop down, you come up, the axe handle releases the axe head, and either the axe handle or the axe head hits somebody on the head, and they tragically die from that. Well, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth would be the family that experienced manslaughter of one of their loved ones could come after you. It was to avenge the blood that had been spilled. But since it was manslaughter, God had established through the different tribes 7 different cities of refuge. And he names those cities of refuge. And if you were about to be on trial, or the family was going to come avenge the death of their manslaughtered loved one, the person who committed the act, they could run to a city of refuge, and they could be protected by the gates and the people who were there until the family members were satisfied or they had passed on. So within Jewish teaching, rabbis had caught on to that, and they understood that, and they said, well, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And Jesus says, well, there's a different way to think about this. So he says, you've heard it said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Now that's difficult because sometimes people want to come and borrow your tools. They want to say, hey, I'll bring it back to you, and it's in worse shape. There's all these things that we all go through where someone asks for something, and it's difficult because we're not always fairly compensated for things that are messed up when people borrow them. People want to take advantage. We understand that. Now, Jesus isn't saying being a doormat here. He's actually saying, do not get revenge. Do not let it overtake you, cause you become bitter, to rise up against someone, because in reality, changing the heart of another person doesn't come through vengeance or might or war. In fact, it often turns them against you. But the stronger person that has spiritual fortitude, they're able to take insults. That doesn't mean they step into the arena and take insults. You see this in the New Testament where the disciples, they would go out and they would preach, and they would also do risk factors of, should we stay in the city? Should we not stay in the city? Is God calling us to another place? They snuck Paul out in the middle of the night when a mob wanted to kill him. Jesus slipped through crowds because it wasn't his time to go through the Easter passion, the suffering that he would at the cross. So this is not just stepping out there and go, everybody beat me up, take all of my stuff, here you go. It's when you deal with hardships and problems that it doesn't turn you into a bitter, vengeful person. I like what one person said. They said, bitterness is like taking the poison that you want to give to someone else, drinking yourself, and expecting them to die. So Jesus is getting at the heart of a people group, especially the Jewish people, becoming hard-hearted, vengeful, revengeful, bitter, to where it's difficult for God to use someone like that, because then it's about self. And what Jesus said was, pick up your cross daily, follow me, deny yourself. So when Jesus says to his crowd and says, if someone asks you or force you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Now, this has some contextual issues with it. The context would be when he says, when someone tells you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. There was a Roman rule that if a soldier asked you to go 1 mile, you were legally obligated by Roman law to do so. And there's conflict between the Romans and the Jewish people. I'll never go a mile with that guy. I'll just skip out on it. There's no way. So bitterness, vengefulness, an unrepentant heart, the inability to empathize. And so there was that context of, if those Romans tell me to go 1 mile, why would I ever want to do that? We're forced to do this. And Jesus says, how are you going to change anything with bitterness, with vengefulness, with revenge? I tell you, go with them 2 miles. And so to be a person of the second mile, expecting nothing out of it. That's what I love about youth hunting. I went youth hunting with a 12-year-old. Actually, he's 11, but he turns 12 this next week. And so ODFW said, yeah, you can take him out. He's done all the proper things. So we go out this morning. And yesterday, we went out as well and didn't really hear anything. We saw some turkeys and spooked them. They took off flying, and they were just really small jakes. So, well, let's try to call one in. So this morning we go out, we get out of the car, I make some calls, don't hear anything, and we go over a ridge, and I make a call, and I hear 2 turkeys. I'm like, oh, there's 2 of them. They're about 200 yards away. So I bet if we set up here, they might come over this ridge this way. So if we set up here, it's probably going to happen. And so I call again and hear the, and I said, did you hear that? And he goes, no. And I call again and hear, and I said, did you hear that? He says, no, I don't hear it. It sounds like a dog barking. I was like, it's the canyon, but I hear turkey gobbling. So we go and we get set up, and I call again, and we hear a little bit closer, a little bit closer. It's like, he's got to be just over the ridge. So let's go ahead and try it out. So I call one more time. He's close enough to it because they need one thing you know about turkey hunting is that the gobblers usually call the hens over, but they get curious if they don't see them. So they might come over. And then when they see the decoys, they see a young turkey with a hen, and they're like, I'm going to beat him up. I'm going to go for him. So then they fan out and they strut, and then they get going over to him. So anyway, it's strutting away, coming this way, and I'm getting amped up. So I'm like, don't shoot yet. Safety off. Get your finger on the trigger. And trying to whisper about it. And turkey comes, and I say, okay, you can go ahead and shoot now. And 11, 12-year-old kid, he shoots. Turkey jumps up a little bit, stands up, looks around, is like, what's going on? And then books it. And then I looked over the video review. It looks like it's just off just a little bit. So we'll get after it again. What's great about youth turkey hunting is that adults don't get to do anything. They get to set it up, and they get to call, and they get that thing, but you don't get the satisfaction of pulling the trigger and self-indulgence, the self-indulgence that comes from doing that. You get to see someone else succeed. You get to see someone else finish that calling and everything. And it's an attitude of the second mile during adults working with youth in hunting. You don't get the satisfaction of the beard or the picture or anything like that. And it just reminds me what Jesus says. If someone asks you to go the second mile, and you have the ability to put yourself second, to sit behind the scenes and to elevate someone else, man, what an amazing way to live. That's exactly what the cross is about. You look at the cross. I think got one right behind me. It's flipped on me. So cross right here. That's a symbol of death, but it's also a symbol of the ability for Jesus to put himself second. Philippians 2 talks about this. He did not find something as equality with God to be something to be grasped, but humbled himself and died a robber's death, a thief's death. Not that he was that, but he was accused of blasphemy, and so he put us first. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So I want to remind you to be a person of the second mile, and I like what Max Lucado said and encourages us to do. It's in this everyday, give every day a chance. And he says, this is the joy of the second mile. Have you found it? Your day moves with the speed of an ice flow and the excitement of quilting a tournament. You do what is required, math problems in one chapter in literature, but do no more. You are reliable, dependable, and quite likely bored. You dream of Fridays, holidays, and different family or different job when maybe all you need is a different attitude. Give your day a chance. Daily do a deed for which you cannot be repaid. In the final days of Jesus' life, he shared a meal with his friends Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. Within the week, he would feel the sting of the Roman whip, the point of the thorny crown, and the iron of the executioner's nail. But on this evening, he felt the love of three friends, where he didn't. There's plenty of times where, at least from a human standpoint, Jesus didn't need to do what he did. Now, theologically, he needed to do what he needed to do, or what he did for the redemption of man. But if you were in his place and you're looking at situations that he was in, how would you do it? How would you be a person of the second mile? How would you be a person where other people are elevated and they are taken care of and they are looked after, and you go the second mile? So I'll leave you with this. Be a person where every single day you do something where you don't get repaid for it. No glory, no clapping, no reward, just uplifting another person where you go the second mile. Because I can imagine that when the Jewish people were asked, go this mile with me by a Roman soldier, they were scoffing on the inside, embarrassed by the ability for another nation to tell them what to do. And Jesus says, listen, go the second mile. It becomes a way of living where you do not get repaid for something that you do. So maybe in the next it's 10:55, maybe in the next 15, 20 seconds, why don't you give me something in the chat where you've seen someone go the second mile, or you love a story of the second mile, and people can look at those afterwards. We want to be a church of the second mile where we're sometimes misunderstood, sometimes understood. We want to be a church of the second mile where in the community we have a good reputation. We be a church of the second mile where people can say, okay, they're kind of different. They don't act like us, and it's kind of weird, but the ability to love and love well is above everything else. Jesus asked that of his disciples, where he says they will know, where he's praying and he says, let the world know they are my disciples by their theology. No, let them know they are my disciples by how they reject everything that we do and they just look like they hate us. No, he says they'll know by love. Now, love tells the truth. So we live in a culture where telling the truth is going to be interpreted as not loving, which hold on tight, because it's going to be a doozy over the next 10 years, I think, unless many, many people come to repentance and understand what God wants for them. But being able to love and then letting people who are sensitive, who God is maybe calling to consider him, that will open the floodgates for God's love in their life. They'll know we are his disciples by our love, speaking truth in love. So let me get no, Andrea says, being a blessing of a mom, that's, man, you got to go the second mile all the time, right? Even when you're cringing inside and you're like, I want to say this, or I don't want to say this. Being a mom, I know being married to a mom, she goes the second mile all the time, for me and for our children. And so I praise God for that type of person in my life, my wife being a mom and a person of the second mile. And so you can share your prayer requests now. Any questions you have, I'd be more than willing to answer those, even if it's off the wall. Questions like, what is my favorite dessert? Maybe you can type that in. Does anybody know what my favorite dessert is? I don't really have one. I was offered cupcakes yesterday or the day before, and I was like, when sweets come by, I'm not particularly. Now, if you gave me a plate of beef jerky after eating a steak, I'd probably take the beef jerky over something else. So I'm going to put this one up. Esther Wayne saying that appreciate Stacy Brown helping by getting the mail when not able to get out. That's person of the second mile. Just everyday little things that are helpful for others and living that out. Pecan pie, actually, interestingly enough about pecan pie, is when I was little, those were my favorites. Now, not like homemade pecan pie. Grew up for the first 12 years of my life in Tennessee, and they made these pecan pie, probably terrible for you, fake something, but I like those in the little tins. I would eat those quite a bit. But nowadays, when I eat pecan pie, all I can taste is like eating a maple tree or something. I don't know exactly what's in it, but it's super thick, and I don't know. Not a big fan of it. But it's kind of like where you want to eat that one thing once a year just because it's nostalgic. So pecan pie I like, but I don't know if I really even have a favorite. German chocolate cake, that's like a once a year thing. Ice cream whenever we go to Dairy Queen and my kids get ice cream, I usually order some fries and the nacho sauce or it's white queso sauce. And I guess really the only sweet thing I really like is Pepsi. So kind of interesting that way. So I hope that you have a great Sunday. I'll hang out here for another couple of seconds to see if anybody else has any questions or observations or things that they'd like to say, and we'll share with each other. So I haven't seen anything jump up yet. We'll do a countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So hey, have a blessed day. We'll let you know what's for this next week. I do know key people that have been diagnosed with COVID, and we've been praying for them. Sarah's got it. Okay, here's the number one sweet thing that I will never turn down. I would have it all the time, but got to watch it. And when I travel to Kansas City in May, anytime I go to the Midwest, this is the first thing I get. Sweet tea. That's the kryptonite for my Superman meal type thing. So love barbecue, love all that stuff, but sweet tea is the best. And I don't know why, but that's it. And Sarah does cheesecake. No, I don't know. It just any type of cookies or anything like that. I could live without it. So, but sweet tea is it. It's just the best thing that there is besides Jesus and salvation, family and church and all that other stuff. But as far as food items, it's probably my go-to. So anyway, love you. Be praying for Megan and Will as they figure out all the medical stuff to get back home. Looks like that is on the swing. It's going to be happening. Secondly, Oh yeah, Katrina's got it right. Soda. It's about the only soda and sweet tea. So Megan and the church decision making when it comes to some more COVID spread. Be praying for that. We do right now in Dufur. I don't know how many people are out there cycling around. Maybe you've seen them. I haven't taken a look at the park, but be welcoming, accommodating to them. We want Dufur to have a great reputation when it comes to these things because it's economic stimulating, it's community building. I do know the Ranger Athletic Fund gets help from that as well. So if anyone runs across this that was part of that, thanks for doing all you do for the community of Dufur, and hope that goes well. So wave at people as they take a 58-mile trek around the back roads here. So love you, and we'll hopefully praying that we'll have a live service on Sunday. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, shoot us a message on Facebook. Shoot me a message on my Facebook as well. Another tidbit about me, I don't add people hardly ever to Facebook unless I have a personal interaction with them and then ask them. If they ask me to be a friend, I got to see who they're friends with. And then if they're really not friends with people I am around, I hardly ever add them. I know I've got one person that's hanging out in my friend list that's requested, and I don't really know who they are. And so unless they message me, I probably won't add them. So anyway, glad you were here. Glad we got to connect. And as always, reach out if you need something. Love you.